So today's lesson is about translating mathematical expressions. So taking a sentence like 3 times a number increased by 2 and making it 3n plus 2.
Do you have a key from Mrs. class?
Do you have a what?
A key from the class?
I don't. I can call and see if someone can come unlock it or if someone's covering it, but I don't have a key.
Okay.
So you guys are staying tight. So taking sentences like written out and translating it to expressions and equations, which is a really like elementary level skill. So you're probably wondering like, why are we doing that now? Okay, so the reason is because based on the benchmark scores, there are some gaps that need to be filled. So we're kind of including what I'm calling the reteaching unit into our curriculum. So normally we would have started topic 4, but we're just going to kind of push that off for a few weeks and make sure that we fill in those gaps that need to be filled. And this is one of them. So translating mathematical expressions. In order to be successful at that, you need to be able to recognize signal words that tell you to group symbols, or not to group, but to group numbers, to add and subtract, to multiply, divide, and things like that. And if you are asked to solve them, that you do it in the correct order. So that's what we did yesterday, was order of operations. So you guys should know what order to be completing the problem in. So what portion to do first. If you did not finish the scavenger hunt yesterday, it was your responsibility to get it finished at home. So I'm checking it today for that one time in class that I check it. And then if it's not finished, or maybe you were absent yesterday, then just upload it to school to do when you do it. So I'll give you points for whatever you have now. I also still have the scavenger hunt papers like on the wall, as you can see. So later there will probably be extra time and you can even do it that way too if you like it better that way. All right. I am recording now. I'll post it in here when I'm done, but also here's some videos that you might find helpful too. So I didn't make them, but they're helpful, so check them out. They have like nice graphics. Maybe you'll remember it better. All nice and fun there. All right. Moving on. The practice this time, wanted to switch it up, is going to be a puzzle piece in Schoology. So it's just a practice, it's not an assessment, but you should be using it to kind of gauge where you're at. I want you to shoot for an 80% or higher on that puzzle piece. So you get 2 attempts automatically, and if you don't hit that 80% or higher, or if you want to try and get 100%, you know, I am willing to give you more attempts, but I don't want to give you more attempts if you spent like 30 seconds on it. Because then that tells me you were just guessing and you're just trying to memorize what's the correct answer. So if you want extra attempts, let me know after you have used your 2 attempts and I will reset it for you. Another big thing, which I will be emailing to you all and your parents hopefully this afternoon, is that tutoring hours will be on Fridays from now on until I tell you otherwise. So just know it's Fridays now. If you're like, no, I can't make it Fridays, there is other algebra teachers that you can go to for tutoring, like Miss Bowers across the hall, Mr. Fox on the other side of the hallway, and they have tutoring every Tuesday and Thursday. So really you can get like extra math help 3 times a week from the 3 of us, basically. So just keep that in mind. If you were wanting to do test corrections or retake something, you would have to do it during my tutoring hours on Friday, or you can do it in class just anytime I'm not teaching. I'll let you work on a retake or correct your old tests. Like if you plan to go to Mrs. Bowers, Mr. Fox, or me for tutoring, come prepared. Like don't just show up like, oh, well, I need to get my grade up. Like, okay, do you just need help understanding? Do you you just need help with your homework, like, I don't know what you need. So you need to bring either a worksheet or a review that will help you. Right? Maybe you're struggling and we can help you with that. Questions about any of that? All right, I know like from the last test, I feel like the kids that regularly come to my tutoring did a lot better. So just keep that in mind, even if you're just coming to work on your homework, that can be something that helps you. And with this reteaching unit that we're doing, like normally we would do like an exit ticket every other day. For the reteaching stuff, we'll just save it for Fridays. So for the next 3 weeks, you're gonna have a test on Friday, maybe about 20 questions on what we learned that week. Any questions about that? All right, so no like little quizzes in the middle of the week, just on Fridays from whatever we learned for that week only. All right, so I know I'm talking a lot. We will go into the notes now, and then your practice after that. So far, we've had extra time at the end. We'll just see how it goes in here. So translating mathematical expressions, you're looking for signal words or keywords and phrases. So what are some phrases that tell you to add? Some, good. Plus. What else? Combine, good, I really like that one. So that's like for combined like terms. When we're doing that, we're adding them together. Also total. I mean, I would argue that total can also be like equal sign, but usually on the other side of that equal sign is you adding them together. Like we're buying tickets and it's a total of $15. So you add the price of the tickets together. All right. Any other ones? And there's a ton, even more than the ones we're writing on here. But like here's the real common ones, like more than, increase by. I know we don't have room, I'll just put it somewhere up there. All of those tell you to add. Does order matter with addition? It does not matter. So if I say the sum of 3 and 5 is the same thing as writing the sum of 5 and 3, right? Like they're the same thing. So just keep that in mind. What about subtraction? Does order matter with subtraction? Yes. So I would probably star this, and I would say order matters. Usually I say like a good rule of thumb is just write it in the order that it appears in the sentence. All right, with like a couple exceptions. But for subtraction, order matters. So what are some words that tell you to subtract? Good. What else? Less than. I'm going to put less than down here because that one's kind of a special one. Any others? Subtracted from. I'm also putting that down here because again, they're a little special. And then maybe look at your addition words and do the opposite. Like what's the opposite of plus? What's the opposite of combine? You could say take away. I know we don't really use that in like high school level, mostly like elementary level, but still take away, decrease by, if you want to fit that in here somewhere, but I think you get the point. Any questions so far? All right. So then multiplication. Does order matter with multiplication? No, because 3 times 5 is also 5 times 3, right? So This one, order doesn't really matter. And I'll just write it in the same color I wrote addition, because addition order doesn't matter as well. What are some words that tell you to multiply? Product. Usually when I say like the product of blank and blank, we're multiplying. What else? Times. Multiplied by. That one's pretty easy. I'll put that one up there though. I'm gonna say stuff like when I say each or every. Because if I say it costs $3 for each person, you know it's 3 times however number of people. Right? Or if it's like every week, then it's whatever number of times the number of weeks, things like that. What about things like twice? So twice implies multiplication, but what are you multiplying by? I'm doing twice a number. I'm multiplying it by 2. So I'll put that in there. And also things like triple. If I'm tripling a number, what am I multiplying it by? 3. So just things like that. Any questions? All right, so then division. Does order matter with division? Yes, so I'm just gonna kind of make a little note of that. Order matters. So if it says, what are some words for division? What's opposite of product? Quotient. So if I say, what's the quotient of a number and 3, then it should be n divided by 3. Right? Is 3 divided by n the same thing? No. All right, so order matters. Just do it in the order that it appears in the sentence. What are some other words that imply division? Good, half of, third of. So you can also say, like, that could also be multiplication too. Like if you're doing half of n. But if you're doing it like this, and it's definitely division, you can do n divided by 2. It's the same thing. Right, so half of something, you're dividing it by 2. A third of something, what are you dividing it by? 3. Good. There's not many for division that I can think of, so we can put in divided by. Not a whole lot there. Any questions? All right, then we also have a couple other special ones. So parentheses, phrases. So signal words that tell you to group numbers. That would be, and these are just examples, there can be more, but we could say times the sum of. All right, because if it's like 7 times the sum of, so we'll put times the sum of a number and 1. If I just wrote it like that without parentheses, well, if you follow order of operations, you really should be multiplying the 7 and the n first. But that's not what it wants you to do. It wants you to multiply it after taking the sum of it. So that's why you need those parentheses in there. Does that make sense? I feel like kids really struggle with that one. It's the parentheses phrases. Also, when we say things like times the difference of. I'm gonna abbreviate it. All right. You have to group them together so that you know to take the difference of them first and then multiply it. All right, turnaround phrases. I also call them like switch words. So I normally will tell you to just follow the order of the sentence, right? Like the difference between a number and 10. You know, it's n minus 10. Now you fill that in for you. But if you say certain phrases like less than, or subtracted from, and I can't think of any others, so for right now it's just these two. So less than and subtracted from, then you need to switch the order. So if I said 10 less than n, that would work for this one, right? That one can be 10 less than n. But for number 4, so we have 4 subtracted from a number. So 4 subtracted from tells you minus a number. Do we know what that number is? No. So we can label it a variable. I usually will pick n for number. But if I wrote 4 minus n, I would be wrong. Because we have subtracted from, which is a switch word. So really, what should my answer be?
N minus 4.
N minus 4. All right, so otherwise you can just go in the order, and you should go in the order that it's written. But if you see less than or subtracted from, you need to switch the order. Questions? I will do a couple more examples, and I'll do the even ones right here. So we have the product of a number and 10 increased by 1. So just kind of dissect it and translate it, like word by word. So the product, what does product tell you to do? To multiply. I am multiplying a number and 10. How can I write that? I can do n times 10, I can do 10n, because for multiplication, order doesn't matter. So the product of a number and 10. And then it's increased by 1. What does increase tell us to do? To add, and what are we adding? 1. Does that make sense? Any questions? All right, so then you guys try those 3 examples that we didn't do, 1, 3, and 5. So the product of a number and 3, what did you write? 3 times n times 3, 3n, all would be acceptable. What about the quotient of a number and -5? N over -5, any disagreements? Good. And if you wrote it like this, that's fine too. The quotient of a number and -5, as long as n is the first one that you write, because order matters with division and subtraction. All right, number 5, the sum of twice a number and 7. What did you write?
2 times 7.
Good. All right, so twice a number, multiply it by 2. And then it's the sum of, so adding them together with 7. Questions at all on this side? All right, I'm going to try and find the harder ones on the back side. So we're not necessarily doing all of them together. But we can start with number 7. So 4 less than a number squared. We didn't talk about squared. But what does that tell us? Times itself. But do we know what that number is? We don't, but that number we'll label as a variable, and it should have an exponent of what? 2. All right, so we have, I'm just kind of underlining it and translating it for you. We'll put it in the right order later. So we have 4 less than, what operation is that? Less than a number. And again, we don't know what that number is. And then squared, so I have an exponent of 2. Now, is less than one of our switch words?
Yes.
Yes, so how should I write this? Good. Any questions there? All right, what about twice a number divided by 5? Good, and then it's divided by 5. So 2n over 5, or you can write it as 2n divided by 5, same thing. Good, any questions? All right, down here we have equations. So how are equations different from what we were doing like up here? Good, equations have equal signs. Like look at the first 4 letters, it almost spells equal. So now we're just incorporating equal signs in there. So like the sum of twice a number and 10 is 36. So the sum, what does sum tell us to do? Twice a number we know would be what? 2n, right? So the sum of twice a number, so the sum of 2n and 10 is, what does is signal? Equals 36. All right, and right now we're not told to solve it. I know that you could. We're just translating it. Well, let's do 10 together and then I'll give you some to try. So we have 3 times the difference of a number and 7 is 18. So how would you write that? Would it be this?
Or I meant like parentheses.
Parentheses around the n and the 7, right? All right, because if you look back at your grouping symbol words on their front page, anytime we do something to the difference of a number or the sum of a number and 7, then you have to group them first. But if I just wrote it without the parentheses, and I'll take them away right now, then what it's telling me to do without the parentheses is multiply it by 3 first, and then subtract, which is not correct. All right, a couple for you to try. You will do, I'll have you guys try number 12. Number 15. And 13. So these 3 that I started, the you try. All right, what did you write for 5 times the sum of a number and 6 is 48? Good. And if you put the 5 on this side, that's fine too, where my mouse is. But good, just make sure those parentheses are in there. Questions about that? All right, what about 13? 1/2 a number, how do I write that? Good, you can write it like that. If you wrote it as n over 2, that's good too. But 1/2 n. N minus 8, good. How did you know that it was the same letter?
the number itself.
Good, so less than the number itself. Right, that way you know it's not a different variable that you should use, it should be the same one, whatever you use. And then 15, how'd you write that? 15 decreased by the quotient of a number, and 3 is 20.
15 and divided by 3.
Good, and I know you said parentheses. You can put it in parentheses if you want. Do I really need to though? No, because order of operations would tell you to divide that out first anyway, right? If you put parentheses though, that's fine. You know, you wouldn't get marked off on it. But if you put it like this, that's correct too. Any questions? All right, now your test that you're taking Friday is really heavy on the translation. So if you're not comfortable with it, just ask for help. But it's like mostly translating expressions. There wasn't really inequalities on there, but we'll cover them because we have learned inequalities before too. And then we're doing some reteaching stuff with inequalities next week also. So let's fill in the symbols. What does the less than symbol look like? Show me with your hands. All right, what direction? The opening should be to the right, right? Because it's less than. What about less than or equal to? How does, I mean, you don't have to show me that one with your hands, but what does it look like? Good, same thing, but with a line underneath. That's the equal to part. What does greater than look like? Opposite direction, and then greater than or equal to would be good. Same thing, just with the line under it. That says that it can be that number also. So a couple examples, the signal words, I don't really try and remember for inequalities. I just kind of think about it logically. So, and I'll kind of skip the easy one. So let's look at 20 first. We have a number is at most 45. So a number being compared to 45. Do we know what that number is? So I'm going to put it as n, leave some space for the symbol, and the other number, which is 45. Now, if n is at most, are you finished? I'm just put on the stack table. If n is at most 45, then can n be bigger than 45? Can it be smaller than it?
Yes.
If it's at most 45, n can be smaller, right? Like if it was 20, that meets the requirement, right? So I'm going to put less than because n should be smaller than 45. Can it also be exactly 45? So then put that little line underneath to show that it can be 45 also. Questions about that? Now let's do a number is at least 16. So a number being compared to 16. I leave some space for the symbol. If it has to be at least 16, can it be greater than 16? Yes, so I'll put a greater than symbol. Can it be exactly 16? Yes. Like when they say you have to be at least 16 years old to work here, you can be exactly 16. So things like that. With that logic, you guys can try 24 and 25, and then we'll call it a day on the notes. So try 24 and 25. When you finish those two, you can take out your Chromebook and get started on your puzzle piece in school. 24 and 26. So how do I write a number is no more than 26? All right, any disagreements? I would agree. So if it can be no more than 26, It has to be less than it or equal to it. What about a minimum number of 5? Good, so n is greater than or equal to 5. If it's a minimum number, then there has to be 5 or more. So n can be greater than 5 or exactly 5. Questions? All right, so here's how you find your puzzle piece if you haven't already found it. Go to Schoology. Oops, no. Okay, go to Schoology and then I'm in this week's folder. So this week's folder is always toward the top of your page. If you look under today's date, translating expressions practice. Just a homework assignment, but try to get an 80% or higher. I can always give you another test as long as you're not guessing.